Hi. Welcome to Berg Mountain University and our COWS # How to Run for Mayor. In this our 10th session we consider Mayor Hackett, his 3 elections and how his youthful tact uplifted the younger generations in the city toward further Archie events.
10th prerequisite. Mayor Hackett and the inevitable. The civil rights movement had effects far after Dr. King, and some argue that it is still just as strong in the hearts and minds of a conscious Memphis proletariat, but more so in 1982. By 1982 Ronald Reagan had been in office a year and during stagflation presented his economic plan of Reaganomics. The general idea of Reaganomics was but a theory where the wealth of those with more would trickle down to those with less. The first vice president to become president since Martin Van Buren, George Bush Sr. with Reagan's policy in place dealt more with foreign policy in navigating the end of the Cold War. Elected under the Republican Governor Lamar Alexander, Mayor Hackett was considered a fiscal conservative more amicable to the Republican Party while the demographics of the city was in the midst of change. Though mayoral elections tend to sway with those more charismatic, Democrat Ned McWherter became governor in 1987, which motivated Democrats on a local level where in lieu one of the governor, Democrats in Memphis began to resent a local political structure that was more reflective of our predominantly African American population. The trickle-down theory may have looked to the nation as if it were better than it was, but insufficient, and though Hackett was likable, African Americans waited patiently for relief that wasn't steeped in theory. Democrat Bill Morris was Shelby County Sheriff from 1964 until 1970, but as Shelby County Mayor he held office before, while and after Hackett's reign until 1994. Winning the special election of 1982, Richard Dick Hackett was elected twice more, being younger than others and wise enough to know haberdasheries win elections primarily and less determined by voter demographics.
Hackett won 3 elections as Memphis mayor, beginning in the special local election of 1982, again in the regular election of 1983 and lastly in 1987. In office until 1991 for 9 years his model citizenship resulted in drones of young Memphians in business attire whose attitudes were warm as smiles heated by a confidence in leadership. When elected, Hackett was the youngest mayor in the city's history and rather popular despite racial issues of the day. He presented a face of the city to the world that looking youthful, we were healthy also. A somewhat handsome young man, Hackett motivated those younger toward achievement which, attractive, encouraged a brighter side of Memphis, but here is the issue. Hackett, accepting his position in 1982, knew that in 1981 a $58 million Shelby County Criminal Justice Center at Poplar and 3rd would be completed. Housing the Memphis Police Department, the Attorney General's Office, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, City Court, General Sessions Court and Criminal Court, it may have been built for justice, but it surely did and does generate a lot of revenue. Now, replacing the old county jail was a brand new 10-story facility which, though state-of-the-art at the time, would soon be filled with a much greater percentage of African Americans than others. Since then, the overwhelming difference between whites and blacks was that while whites rejoicing over the new building and a more adequate facility to house criminals, it haunted black families who safe at home prayed for their sons' and daughters' uneventful return. This criminal justice system was like a casino that never paid off, but extracting taxes from criminals for injustice was done so predominantly from those African Americans less.
His presentation was an encouragement in the promotion of our city as a poster boy to generations of young male Memphians who more modern also appreciated the greater benefits of King Cotton. Mayor Hackett was caught between 2 worlds, one of Memphis painted lily white and another more diverse where it almost seems like chaos when in actuality that's exactly what it is, where someone is going to say it is all working out as he planned, as if he were king, when he isn't, and it couldn't have been. There is no order with chaos and mayhem where, while living in it being unable to accept people of higher rank order may never be. I have to tell students all the time, being economically challenged doesn't also mean that a child is bad, like it is not more likely the case and continue, but it doesn't help anyone's case with a frown that complements a negative appearance. With as much cotton that has been distributed from the city throughout the nation and our world for over 400 years or so, it was a foregone conclusion that men preferred looks similar to Hackett's rather polished one. As cotton was inexpensive as a plant, the price skyrocketed at the haberdashery where it wasn't so much as the material costs but much more so the design. Mayor Hackett was heads on one side of a coin called Memphis, while tails was the harsh reality of a building meant to house African Americans in the guise that justice is blind while mostly apprehending people of color. Not saying whether it was fair or not, but appearance mattered the world to Memphians where Mayor Hackett daily set the bar.
Mayor Hackett might have been elected a 4th time, but as whites fled the city to more comfortable living in the suburbs, the demographic of the city changed. Sure, he was popular with whites and blacks, but as the voting body of local citizens prone to side with those who they could more easily associate. There were many African Americans who didn't vote down racial lines, but of the 248,000 votes cast only 172 more votes for Harrington would mean Hackett's loss. While in office Hackett's focus was on tourism, business growth, nonprofit organizations, and downtown development. Unlike Henry Loeb and J. Wyeth Chandler, Hackett being younger was much more racially moderate appointed African Americans, James Ivey as police director and Greg Duckett as chief administrative officer.
Mayor Hackett, winning the local special election of 1982, would be chosen twice afterwards. Being more youthful than other mayors, Hackett motivated a younger generation less concerned with earlier generations' racial issues. Wise enough to know haberdasheries win elections, a higher level of aesthetics professionalism reflected in the economy afforded growth and a change in demographics.
That concludes our information we have for you this week. If there are any questions, feel free to ask now. Next week we will cover the 11th prerequisite in the triumph of Mayor Harrington and issues he faced. See you there then.